Now, where's your nearest local bank? This story seems to be cropping up, I think, on breakfast more and more now. For some of us, that question isn't as straightforward as it used to be. Earlier this year, we discussed the closure of Glastonbury's final bank. And today, HSBC have announced closures which will affect parts of Somerset. The branch will be closing its stores in Burnham-on-Sea and Shepton Mallet. Now, we have tried to contact HSBC this morning, but as of yet haven't heard back. In a statement to burnhamonsea.com, the bank have said footfall has fallen over the past 5 years at these branches by 28%. And based on this, they've made the difficult decision to close them. James Heappey is the Conservative MP for the region covering both of those towns. Good morning to you, James.
Morning, Claire. Happy Halloween.
Thank you, and to you. What's your reaction to the news?
I'm furious. I mean, these branch closures just come about all the time, and for all that the banks say about declining footfall in branches because more and more of us are banking online, which is not untrue. The reality is that there are parts of our community, both small businesses and those who are less mobile or who are unable to use the internet, for whom these decisions are a really, really big deal.
But they've also got to make business decisions like everybody else. And if for them it is not a good decision to keep them open because of footfall, can you not understand their reasoning for closing?
I do. And I've been doing a lot of work with Professor Russell Griggs, who is the guy that has been tasked with looking at the government policy on this, which is called the Access to Banking Protocols. And he's been reviewing those protocols over the last few months. And you're absolutely right. His conclusion is that you can't stop banks making commercial decisions. But I think what we must do is stop the banks trying to have it both ways, because at the moment they are closing branches and claiming that people can use the post offices instead. That's not true. Post office are not allowed to offer a full range of services for all banks because the banks won't let post office do that. The banks also claim that small businesses are increasingly going to find themselves operating in a cashless society. That's fine. We're all now, or a lot of us now, have contactless cards and things. But the banks still charge small businesses transaction fees for using those sorts of machines. And the problem is if you're John Lewis and you're paying a small amount on a £400 new fridge freezer or something, then you can probably bury that cost. But small businesses invariably have to pass it on to the customer, which means that they're not particularly inclined to do that. So until banks sort of actually give the cashless facility across the small business for free, and until banks hand over to post office the full set of responsibilities, I think it's unfair for them to be closing branches and claiming that the impact is minimal.
Burnham still has 3 banks remaining after this closure. Shepton will have 3 remaining. Could the customers
Shepton will just have 1 remaining. Only Lloyds Bank will be left in Shepton once HSBC closes.
Could the customers not just say, OK, I'm going to take back control. If you're going to leave, I'm going to move banks?
Please, please, please do. What happened in Glastonbury was all 3 chose to leave at one time. And I am sure that if 2 of them had chosen to leave and 1 had been left in the town, enough people would have switched to that remaining bank that remaining bank would have seen no need to leave. So in Shepton, what we really need is for people to switch. And I know the BBC is supposed to be entirely neutral, but everybody should switch to Lloyds Bank in Shepton in order to keep that last bank in town and to keep it busy. In Burnham, there is still more of a choice, but certainly if you live in the Burnham-on-Sea area and your bank has deserted us, then switch to one of the banks that remains, because the banks, it's not rocket science. If the branch is busy and it's processing high-value transactions, the branch stays.
Yeah, I know it's all well and good saying that, and many will say, yeah, I know, I absolutely agree, but Glastonbury was in that situation, and even when they were down to their final bank, it still closed because it didn't see enough people coming through the door.
That wasn't the timeline, Claire. So all the remaining 3 branches announced their closures within about 6 weeks of each other. They had all taken the decision independently, so that we were never in a situation where there was 1 remaining bank in Glastonbury. All 3 committed to closing at pretty much the same time. And as I said, if it had been different, if 2 of them had committed to leaving and 1 of them was to remain open, I'm sure that last bank would have stayed.
All 3 saw a drop in footfall.
Well, yeah, all three made independent decisions
because
to
they
close
saw
at
a
about
drop
the same
in footfall.
time. Well, yes, exactly. But the point is, we're talking about what the benefit might be of people switching their custom to a different bank in the town in order to keep that bank open. In Glastonbury, that was never an option. And the proof that that would have happened is that Nationwide, of course, are now in the process of looking at bringing a branch back to the town. And so many people have said that they are willing to switch to Nationwide, that Nationwide are very likely to do that.
Are you worried that these areas will become another Glastonbury situation?
Well, I'm very worried about Shepton because there is now only one bank remaining in Shepton, and we need to do all that we can to make sure that Lloyd's Bank in Shepton is busy and therefore keeps open. And Burnham, there's a bit more choice, but people, we do need to make sure that people living in a town, if they need a branch, that they switch to one of the banks that has a branch in the town, so that those branches have the business that justifies them being open.
James, as always, thanks very much for coming on to the Breakfast Show this morning.